Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing, testing.
CieloDrive.com Audio Archives.
That is documented about antisocial behavior in a crime that was written up in a book in Denmark by a Dr. Reiter is open to question because there was a natural relationship between the hypnotist and the subject, and the subject would have done the same bidding because of his relationship with the hypnotist. So again, I'd like to repeat, why go through all the trouble of hypnotizing anybody whenever you want somebody to do something? It is the words that produce the results rather than the hypnosis itself. After all, propaganda, newspaper, articles, commercials, etc., all are forms of influencing people without realizing they're being influenced. All forms of religious prayer, communion, are all involve a hypnotic-like suggestibility, and certainly no one can say that they're harmful.
Well, then, in that regard, is it possible for someone to hold other people, perhaps, I think the word that was used in the Manson case was that some people were mesmerized by this man, perhaps, again, through prayer. There was supposed to be some kind of religious cult of sorts. Is it possible that people could be mesmerized by someone else?
Well, I think we're confusing the word mesmerism with being influenced. Certainly people can be influenced, but if we're talking about medical hypnosis, which is a very valuable adjunct as a psychiatric tool when used by the physician, you're stretching the point and saying that this individual influenced these people, mesmerized them. I don't think he went through an actual induction technique, but every spellbinder, every good orator, every actor, every leader uses a form of what you call mesmerism to influence people to do something. We're all influenced. The only people that are not influenced are somebody that's deaf, dumb, and blind. And we certainly are all influenced to go out and kill if the situation demands it, such as when we go to war. Soldiers during boot camp training, etc., are prepared to go out and kill who ordinarily wouldn't kill. And this is all done by suggestion.
So you're saying it is possible that these suggestions are or could be strong enough to encourage someone to kill?
Well, I say that anybody can suggest to somebody else who's willing to follow out the suggestions that they can go out and kill, but this has nothing to do with hypnosis.
Now, perhaps we can carry this a step further. Is it possible that since, this Manson fellow was going to defend himself, that he could influence the jury with the same type of power or something like that? Could he, again, use the word suggest or mesmerize? Is it possible that he could have undue influence on a jury?
No. The only thing that he could do is, if he spoke with enthusiasm and conviction, he could make his whatever statements he stated sound more plausible. But as far as actually hypnotizing the jury, he could not hypnotize the jury.
Because I think some people were talking wildly, perhaps, about not allowing Manson to have any kind of shiny objects or anything like this.
No one can be hypnotized unless they want to be hypnotized. And every good lawyer, and every good talker, as I mentioned, every good actor uses persuasion and can influence people. And as I mentioned, we do not know where this business of persuading somebody by means of words can be called suggestion, and just where it can be called hypnosis. We're talking about hypnosis, we're talking about a very abstract condition that cannot be defined. As a matter of fact, men like Barber, Theodore X. Barber, who's written a great deal on this subject, has shown that practically every phenomenon that can be produced by going through a hypnotic ritual can be produced without the hypnosis. So why waste the time on the hypnosis? And all it does is just merely, in the medical situation, make a person more susceptible to suggestions, and healers wittingly or unwittingly have used hypnosis or suggestion in one form or another without knowing it for centuries.
So I guess basically what you're saying here is that someone, perhaps again like Manson, who's perhaps a tremendous actor, more than having special powers. I guess no one really has a special power.
No one has any special powers because, as I mentioned, it's a wise hypnotist who knows it's hypnotizing whom. And I'd like to also mention that why is it that those people who believe that the possibilities for antisocial behavior discount any possibility that hypnosis can help anybody, and yet they will attribute the most miraculous and effective powers to even a single hypnotic suggestion. If hypnosis were so wonderful and could cure everybody, well, then everybody would want to stop smoking, stop drinking, stop eating, and have their tensions relieved, would go to a hypnotist, and as a result of being hypnotized, their troubles will all be wafted away. Is that the case? Hypnosis itself is not a therapy. It's merely a way of reaching somebody to influence them by means of words, and it's the words that influence them. The way a situation is structured that gets an individual to accomplish a given goal. It is not the hypnotic state itself. Because we don't even know if there is such a thing as a hypnotic state anymore, if we know there's such a thing as a true sleep state or wakeful state. These are merely arbitrary delineations of what we call awareness. An individual who's asleep is less aware. An individual who's hypnotized is a little more aware. So he will respond to suggestions that he wants to respond to. And he will not respond to suggestions that are against his moral code or contrary to his will or contrary to anything that is immoral unless he is predisposed that way already. I think that is the nub of the whole problem.
Doctor, that's great right there. Excellent. Very, very good.
Well, I'm glad to be of help.
And we certainly do appreciate you taking the time. Doctor, first of all, is it possible that someone could be forced to do something they don't want to do or wouldn't do ordinarily under hypnosis? Can suggestions be made that would violate a person's moral code or something like that?
I would like to answer this question, but first I think I ought to state that I've been familiar with the use of hypnosis in the practice of psychiatry. And for some 30 years, since World War II specifically, when hypnosis became quite popular in modern medical science because of the excellent results, the usefulness it had treating battle casualties. Since that time, the use of hypnosis in medicine has become increasingly acceptable amongst the profession. The American Medical Association came out with a position statement recommending the use of hypnosis in all branches of medicine where the doctor is specifically trained in that specialty of medicine, as well as in the use of hypnosis. And now, as to whether or not hypnosis itself can be used to cause a person to behave in a way that is contrary to his normal moral standards, this is a controversy and question that's been raised about hypnosis for a century anyway. All of the research that's been done by professional people indicate to the negative.
Well, I wonder, too, the Manson matter, some of the defendants in the case said that they were mesmerized by this Manson. Is it possible for someone to have that much influence over a group of people or another individual that they would actually be mesmerized, whatever that might mean?
Well, that's the crux of the question, is what does that mean? Certainly, history, current and past, is filled with instances where people have been led by leaders who strongly influence the behavior of their followers, who follow more or less fanatically, as the case may be. Now, a person's morals and ethical values, as you know, are learned by the individual after birth. After you're born, he's taught them by somebody, and they vary considerably in the degree or the depth or strength of the conviction that moral values hold for the individual. Now, as how a leader could cause a person to go against previously held moral standards, this certainly depends on how strong those moral standards were. If they are relatively weak, then he can be talked out of them, or brainwashed, so to speak, to change his whole set of political values, or social values, or even religious values, depending again on the strength of the conviction of these values for the individual.
But again, the abandoning of those standards would be voluntary.
They would always be voluntary, certainly. When one is in a state of hypnosis, he knows what he's doing, and certainly could be held accountable for that. Now, it is true that he, in hypnosis, turns over temporarily the decision-making judgment to the leader or the hypnotist. But he does this voluntarily and knows what's happening at all times.
One other question, would it be possible for an individual to have so much influence, or, again, whatever that quality is that would mesmerize people, that creates the leaders? Could a person have so much of that perhaps he could sway a jury? Manson's going to act as his own attorney. Would he have perhaps an undue influence on that jury?
I would say no, because the basic situation is so different. The jury is not in any way beholden to him, and if there's any truth to the story that these people who were following this man, one would think of it in terms of their special susceptibility, that these were sort of lost souls, outcasts from society, looking for some security, and looking for someone who claimed to have answers and direction, who would fulfill their creature desires, and perhaps give them the drugs that they need, as well as the security in terms of love and goals and identities. If he was able to provide all these things for people who were extremely insecure because of the lack of them, they would be ready to follow him and ready to accept his ideas and blindly obey his commands, because they needed what he had to offer them. Now, the jury would not be in that position.